To the heart of what this video is going to be about. I want to talk just a bit about why I'm doing this. I used to work for a company, and we started working with people that were on a welfare program because we had the ability to utilize that source of extra workers. That's because the company I was working for, the employer I was working for, was actually a government agency. And I was a manager at one of those facilities. And we started using the welfare workers to fulfill some of the jobs and some of the work that we needed done. And that went on for some years. I took it upon myself during the time that we were involved with this program to try to really help some of the people that came through my workplace. I was able to effectively help a number of them, and there were some that I don't feel I was able to help much, but I did try. In the case of the people that I was not able to help, invariably it was because of their mindset. And I just want you to know that I did this for a number of years, and I had literally thousands of people come through my work site. Thousands of people that I interviewed, hired, and employed for as little as one day to as much as I think one of my longest workers worked with me for about 5.5 years. They actually treated it like it was a full-time job, even though it paid very little. Like I said, this is a welfare program. This was a last stop for people that were getting welfare checks and food stamps. And any nonprofit organization or agency or any government office could utilize this workforce. I employed as many as 30 people at one time off of this particular work source. I also worked with the summer youth program, wherein I employed a lot of teenagers. And some of those teenagers came from all walks of life. Some of them were gangbangers, some of them were gang affiliated, many of them came from what I would call dysfunctional homes. But I tried to help and mentor these people, and I was able to do so effectively because many of them credited a lot of the positive things they did in their life to the mentoring that I gave them. And that's one reason I decided to do what I'm doing now. Now let's move past that. I want to talk a little bit more about me so that you also understand my background and where I come from. I have found a lot of things out the hard way. When I first came to this big city where I did not have relatives or anyone else that I knew, I was clueless. I had pretty much lived a charmed life and a relatively sheltered life. So I didn't have parents who were really streetwise. They were intellectually astute and intelligent, but they weren't really streetwise because they really didn't know struggle that much themselves either. I mean, both my mother and father grew up poor, and my father's father had a huge what you would call a farm, I guess, and he had cows and ducks, and he owned his property, he owned the house, he owned the land. He had acres, but they weren't wealthy. He didn't grow up wealthy. He had 10 siblings. Actually, he had 11. One of them died early at childhood. And my mother pretty much had the same story. So, but neither one of them knew anything about welfare or food stamps or struggle or big cities or any of that. They were from the country. So I had to learn a lot on my own. And I went through a time where I had lots of money in my pocket, but after a while I went through it and I ended up having to do what I had to do in order to survive. And for me, that means donating blood. That's what I did. And I did that. I went through a period where I lived off of that for 3 months at a time from literally donating blood. That was literally $15 a week. But anyway, I'm going to get past that. I want to talk about one of the first jobs I got. One of the very first jobs. I saw an ad in the paper, and the ad said something like this: now hiring telemarketers will train, experience not required, call schools and take orders for office supplies. And I'm going to tell you this story for a reason, because it directly relates to this economy today, and it directly relates to you and what I'm going to talk about in this video. Basically, I was optimistic. Will train, experience not required. And I made this up. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something like this. But the bottom line is that's how I got involved. Number one, that's how I found out about telemarketing, okay, as an opportunity, telemarketing as a business, and telemarketing as a source of money and revenue for a job. Okay, so basically they pre-interviewed me over the telephone. He liked the way I sound. He said, okay, you sound like someone I can train. So I came in for an interview and I went through the training. And then after about a day of training, they put me on the phone. We started at 4 o'clock in the morning because we called all nation, and our income was totally based on commission. To make a long story short, I made sales and I made money. Why? Because I did not make excuses. They did not pay me a base salary, but they paid me based on my sales. And the reason I'm talking about this, because I don't care how bad the economy gets, there will always be jobs that will pay you based on what you produce. The problem is people are afraid to get paid based on what they produce because they want a guaranteed job and a guaranteed income where they get paid whether they produce anything or not. And I don't blame you for that, but I'm telling you that rather than be without or make excuses, there are always jobs, including telemarketing and other things, where you can get paid based on what you produce, okay? And not only that, but you can always go to work for yourself and get paid based on what you produce. See, the problem is people don't believe in themselves. They don't believe that they're capable of doing anything. They always blame someone else. They say, no one's giving me a job. They say there's no jobs out there. What is stopping you from being self-employed? Self-employment is viable employment, and it can be potentially one of the best employments you ever have. What is stopping you from doing that? You don't know anything? Well, who's supposed to teach you something? Let me tell you something. I got this job doing telemarketing, okay? Later on in life, I would take the telemarketing skills that I learned on that job and utilize it in my own business. And guess what? I still do that to this day. It is more than 30 years since that time. That's based on a little job that I got working in an office, calling schools all over this country, selling pens and pencils. I made enough money to have money in my pocket, and I learned a skill that to this day I use. One of the second jobs I got, and I was 18 at that time, okay? One of the second jobs I got was responding to an ad like this. I always multitask. I had numerous sources of income coming in at the same time. I went to school, I worked, I did part-time work, I hustled, I had different jobs. I always had different things, and I still do that to this day as well. I have multiple streams of income. I have numerous websites that bring me revenue all the time. Some things I set up many years ago are still bringing in money like clockwork every single month, and that will probably continue for the rest of my life because I had the wherewithal to do something many years ago, even before most people ever heard of this internet, and basically they are still bringing in money to this day with very little input from me. Second job, one of the second jobs I got. Help wanted, no experience required, must be friendly, personable, honest, and reliable. Let me correct myself. This was not the second job I got. After I worked for the telemarketing company, that's when I learned about temporary agencies, and I worked for a number of temp agencies on different temporary jobs, and I began to develop various job skills for a young person. One of the part-time jobs I got, which was only on the weekend, was responding to an ad like this. Help wanted, no experience required, must be friendly, personable, honest, and reliable. As it turned out, when I called in response to that ad, that the job had to do with basically working a food cart. And one of the places that they would place this food cart was in a very, very well-populated location on the weekend. And basically, it was like a hot dog stand, your regular stands you might see in New York or Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, anywhere else where they have those types of stands at. And it also was commission only. I would basically take home a third of what I sold. It didn't take long before it occurred to me, some days I make several $100s. I don't take home several $100s, but that's what I'm taking in. If this was my own business, I would keep all the money other than what it cost me for my product. So from day one, I saw the opportunity and the potential. Another reason I'm telling you about that is because I want you to understand, just like I benefited from what I learned from the telemarketing job, and I also use it in business even today, doing inbound and outbound telemarketing. This job, the basically working the concession job, working a concession stand, a portable concession stand, that also was one of the first viable businesses I had as an adult. I actually had my first business at the age of 5, but this is one of the 5 years old. That's right. This was one of the first businesses I had as an adult. And I took the skills and the knowledge I learned from this business working for commissions And eventually I was working totally for myself, had other people working for me as well, doing most of the work, because I began to accumulate concession stands. Okay. And eventually I had about 7 concession stands going at the same time. I had a yogurt stand, a skate rental stand, and I co-managed, well, actually, I co-managed a restaurant out in a prime location. That's because one of the business persons that was in this area saw how I was operating and saw how I was running this little miniature empire, and he approached me and asked me to work with him in his businesses as well. So we got involved in a partnership with that as well. It didn't work out as well as I would have liked it to, but it was a learning experience for a young man. I was still in my teens even at that time. Okay. One of the third businesses, or jobs I got, was responding to okay. I totally messed this up. I'm not going to go back and redo it. This was the ad that I made up, because I don't remember exactly what it said, for the concession stand. Okay. So I just told you about that one. And so one of the third jobs I want to tell you about was more of an ad like this. Like I said, this was many years ago. It was over 30 years ago. So I'm just making these ads up. I don't remember exactly what they said. And it was an ad something like this. Help wanted, no experience required, must be friendly, personable, honest, and reliable. So what that job was job where a individual was he operated his business out of his car, I guess. I don't know. I mean, that's when he met me, we basically met in front of this other business. We went to his car and he showed me a sports schedule for this university. Okay. And basically he said, what I'm looking for is someone that can go to the various businesses in this area. And let me tell you, this was a very classy, upscale area. A place where you rub shoulders with millionaires, multi-millionaires, and billionaires all the time. A lot of celebrities hung out there. I bumped into a lot of celebrities, talked to them. It was a common thing. It was a very common thing. So you definitely had to represent this company. So basically he said he was looking for someone to go from door to door to various businesses and sell advertising on the sports schedule for this particular university. He did this every year. He had already sold half the slots. He needed someone to sell the other half of the slots. So obviously he had started the business. He was doing the selling himself. He had marketed half of the slots. He wanted me to sell the other half. And I found out I was the only person that was being hired. And what he told me is that he would basically pay me half of the revenue that I collected. So the revenue that I would collect would be based upon whether or not they wanted a small ad or a larger ad. So the only thing he gave me was a sample of the sports schedule. He gave me a sample of the sports schedule itself, and he gave me a receipt book. So from that point, I went door to door in this very pristine upscale area to talk to these businesses and basically tell them, I'm going to give you a piece of paper, which is a receipt, and I need you to give me half the cash now for this advertisement, and then after the ad is placed, you can pay me the other half. That's basically how it worked. Of course, that's not literally what I said. I'm just trying to let you know that so many times we use excuses. So many times we think negative. So many times we don't even try. Yes, this was a white man. And yes, I obviously am black. And yes, this upscale area was obviously predominantly white and Jewish. But that did not stop me from trying to get the job. It did not stop him from hiring me to get the job. And it did not stop me from being successful, because I was successful. I sold every single one of those ads, and I earned that money. I don't remember exactly what it was or how long it took me to do it, but it was much more than I would get on a regular job, because I was getting commission. So that, again, was another experience that I had at a very young age of being paid based on my own efforts, which is, I already had the entrepreneur mindset anyway, and I still have it today, being paid based on my own efforts. That business, that was another job, which also gave me a background, a certain amount of knowledge and experience, which led to some of the things I do now, which is selling advertising to businesses. Okay? I have set up online directories, a number of them, where businesses like clockwork, they basically pay me every single month to be listed on those niche directories. Okay? So all of these things combined have resulted in an inundation of wealth that comes in from multiple sources. I like the idea of being able to do something now that will pay off later and continue to pay off without me doing much of anything else. And that's one reason I'm in the advertising business. I like it. Now, again, one of the first jobs, telemarketing, working for an office supply company, calling different schools. I actually talked to the principals. One of the first principals I called was the principal from the high school I graduated from. It was on the other side of the country, but that was a gas talking to him. I didn't sell anything to him, but that's what I did. And then one of the second jobs, which actually turned into a business also, was working a hot food stand. I later turned that into a business, had a number of employees working for me. In fact, one of the employees that used to work for me in that hot food business, I'm not going to tell you his name, but he is a very well-known African-American actor. And I'll just leave it at that. We actually became really good friends. And I don't know why he was doing that at that particular time, because he had already done acting. He had already been an actor. He had already done some major roles, some leading, well, not lead, well, no, he had never really starred in anything like he has now, but he did have some major parts that he had played even back then. So why he did this for the short time he did it, why he worked this concession stand working for me for that time, I don't even know. I don't even know, but that's what happened. And then I talked about the job, basically the one I responded to, where I was selling advertising for a sports schedule that represented a major university. Okay. And the most important thing about that was that I had the confidence to go in without much training. He basically told me, just go in, just be presentable, be as charming and articulate as you can, and just walk into these businesses. I don't know, for whatever reason, he believed in me. I did not have experience doing that. I did have experience doing the telemarketing, and I did have experience with I think I had done the hot foods business as well, or maybe I was doing it at the same time because I was doing several things simultaneously. But that was enough for him to believe that I could walk into these upscale businesses as a young black teenager and get them to give me half the cash for the advertising, and then they would pay the other half once the ad actually came out. I think the largest size ad was about $300, which means they would pay me $150 up front. Okay, and the interesting thing about it was that because I was getting half, basically the $150 that they paid me, I could take it and put it in my pocket and spend it, because the owner of the company was only going to get paid after he delivered the sports schedule, showed them the ad, and collected the other half. So when they gave me the half, that was actually my commission. And I'm letting you know that all three of these jobs have led to me making a lot of money in every single one. So do not knock any job you get, any job opportunity you have. Always do like I started teaching my son when he was 7 years old. We would play this game called Show Me the Money. And I basically would drive around and I would basically say, show me the money. In other words, he understood that what I was saying is, I want you to look and observe and tell me the various ways that many people are making money based on everything you see. Everything you see, people are making money. That's what we would do, because I wanted him at a young age to begin to think like an entrepreneur. I wanted him to be able to see opportunity even if other people did not see it. Okay? And that's why we would do that. For example, the road we were driving on, he would understand, Daddy, somebody had to design this road. Somebody had to put down this blacktop. There was someone that had to lay it out. Someone had to put these signs up. Someone had to basically do everything we see. That's what that means. So when I played that game with my son at a very young age, it was for him to not only see that there were tremendous opportunities all over the place. Wherever you go, you can't escape it, not only for jobs, but also for business. Also for business. I wanted him to see that. Everything we look at, everything we see, everything we're involved in, someone is making money. And because what I wanted him to be able to begin to see eventually is not only the opportunities that are current, but the potential opportunities. Because basic business has to do with finding a need and filling it. Finding a need or filling it. And it doesn't have to be a need that people are aware that they have. Sometimes you can show people a need, they don't even know that they have a need for it, and they will jump on it. Okay, so I think that's enough for this video. What do we see here? What do we see here? Learn to think like an entrepreneur. Everything you look at as an entrepreneur, if you are an entrepreneur, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should be able to see the potential. When you see something that's not right, that means there is opportunity. Okay? And one of the best and easiest opportunities that I have found in anything I've ever done is working with existing businesses. It is the easiest sale you will ever make, whatever product or service you're trying to sell, because we, people that are in business, are prepared to spend money. That's the nature of business. You're going to spend money. There's no getting around it. You're going to spend money, period. You have to. Okay? Because when you basically look for a job, you're basically going to a company saying, I want you to spend your money. Give me a freaking job. That's what you're saying. Because you know that they have money to spend. Well, why can't you approach some of those same companies with a solution to a problem? Let me give you one tip right now, something I did a long time ago. Most businesses still know very little about the internet. The ones that don't have a website would like to have a website. You can learn how to design websites. You can teach yourself. Stop making excuses. You can teach yourself. Most of what I know that's really useful and value, I've either learned in a very short period of time from experts. I either paid money or just sat at their feet to learn from them, or I taught myself. Okay? I have a friend who was one of the first web designers for a major university. He basically had gone to college for medicine. He dropped out of school his first year. He wanted to be a doctor, but he dropped out of school. He dropped out of med school. And he basically, based on what he had taught himself, he approached the school. This was a long time ago when most universities did not even have a website. And he said, you need a website. I can design your website. I can manage it and maintain it. He basically approached them without having a college degree, and they hired him at $75,000 a year to be their webmaster. They didn't even know they needed a website. He showed them the future. He showed them why they needed a website. He said, I'll set up your website for you. I'll maintain it. I'll manage it. I'll do everything that needs to be done. And they hired him at $75,000 a year. And with that, I'm going to close.